As Western Attorneys General, we work together frequently, and often it is on issues of water quality and quantity and preserving our natural resources. The Attorneys General are charged by law with protecting the environment and natural resources in our individual states. It's a very important part of our job and the responsibility that we have to citizens, in my case, the citizens of Colorado. That was why I made the decision to come to Durango and spend some time on the ground visiting with folks and actually getting a sense of what's happening. I wanted to look at the river just like all of you did. I am certainly happy to see that it is clearing up. I'm told by the locals that it's not at its usual clarity and pH level, but it is getting there. I went down to the river very early this morning when it was just getting light, and one of the things that I noticed is that there is orange sediment on the bottom of the river, on the banks, on some of the rocks. I think we can say that that definitely is something that came from the plume from the Gold King mine. And it concerns me that although we are getting some positive news in the short run from the EPA administrator and CDPHE, our Department of Public Health and Environment, about the toxicity levels in the water here, that plume is still moving. And our sister states of New Mexico and Utah are definitely impacted, as are the Navajo and Southern Ute. And so we can't say, as of today, as pretty as the Animas River looks to us and as beautiful a day as it is in Durango, Colorado, this is not the end of the story. This is the beginning. And what we realize as attorneys who often spend years investigating and litigating cases is that damage sometimes doesn't show up for months or even years. And when it comes to heavy metals in water, like copper and lead, arsenic and mercury, those metals settle into the sediment along a river, and they are upset by every rainstorm, by rafters, by a snow melt. Every time the water is churned up, the sediment is churned up. And it is very good news that we did not have a large fish kill, that our insect life seems to be normal right now on the river. All very good signs. But often fish do not show signs of contamination and poison from these levels of heavy metals for 2 or 3 years at least. And so we have to be vigilant as attorneys general, as the lawyers for the state, as protectors of the environment, to be sure that the assurances that we receive today from the Environmental Protection Agency are the same in 2 years, in 5 years, and even 10 years, when we discover what the damage to the environment actually is. And so I caution folks who are ready to celebrate. Certainly, Durango is open for business. Silverton is. The other AGs will tell you about their rivers and the recreation there. We want people to come to Colorado and see our natural beauty, but at the same time, we have to protect what is ours. The citizens deserve to be made whole. The Environmental Protection Agency has taken responsibility for what happened at Gold King Mine, although we don't yet know all of the facts and who was involved and what exactly happened. It is great to have the assurances of the Environmental Protection Agency. It is the job of the Attorney General to hold folks accountable, and that's what I'm going to do in the state of Colorado. I'm a member of the Conference of Western Attorneys General, and 2 of my colleagues are here with me today. From the state of New Mexico, Hector Balderas, the Attorney General, and from the state of Utah, Sean Reyes. I am pleased to call them my colleagues and also my friends. We've had a little bit of time to visit today. They can talk to you about their own experiences in their states, and I think we're all happy to take questions and have conversations with you. Gentlemen?
Thank you, General Kaufman, and thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Sean Reyes, Utah Attorney General, and I appreciate the invitation from General Kaufman and General Balderas to come to work together to see how we as sister states can, first and foremost, make sure that drinking water, that recreational water, that water critical for people's lives and businesses is safe immediately, and once we've monitored and addressed the acute situation, then to be diligent, as General Kaufman made reference to, for the more and potential chronic issues regarding the contaminants in the river. We're taking this a little bit geographically out of step. I think New Mexico and Colorado obviously had or were impacted even before Utah. Today, I believe our Governor Gary Herbert, has issued an emergency executive order for the state of Utah to underscore the severity of the issues and problems for our citizens and businesses, and also to help trigger the process of accessing federal funds. Again, we are here first to protect the citizens and see in the short term how we can best address and discuss issues regarding remediation and the environment. Secondly, we also wanted to collaborate together and have successfully started that process, working together on sharing expertise, on sharing resources, perhaps taking advantage of economies of scale in terms of monitoring and other processes. Our hope was to visit the mine site. We haven't received approval yet from the EPA to access the site. We were also hoping to meet with the administrator. We're still hopeful that we might be able to fit into her schedule. So far we haven't received confirmation that she'll be able to meet with us, but we think that's critical. And then lastly, we are also starting the process of evaluating legal issues, legal claims. We appreciate the EPA stepping up in terms of making accessible forms for claims, so our citizens can start to take advantage of that process. But we also have other issues that we need to look at, again, in the near term and long term with regard to potential legal claims or issues for our counties, our state, and our citizens. So I'll turn some time over now to General Balderas, and then we'll all be here, I believe, to answer any questions individually or as a group. Thank you.
Thank you. As both my colleagues have indicated, our first priority was to conduct a fact-finding and truly assess the public safety impact of our citizens, immediately speaking. I just recently met with some mayors, county commissioners, and emergency responders downstream in the state of New Mexico. And at this time, I'm very concerned that they have limited water resources and that they are managing those water resources by sharing clean water resources, because there is a fear and confusion of the data in terms of how safe the river is currently today. And so I was glad to hear the administrator is going to be providing an update, because downstream my agricultural communities have been negatively impacted, and there's a lot of confusion going on downstream in the state of New Mexico. Secondly, I was pleased to meet with my colleagues to begin a longer term dialogue about the full extent of damages that are going to be well into our communities for many months and potentially years of suffering, and to begin to develop a legal framework of oversight to ensure that the citizens of our respective states are properly represented in assessing the damages and the full remediation of a tragedy like this. There's a lot of fear from our citizens that they're not getting accurate information, but also that what is the best process moving forward to truly measure, test, and account for the extent of damage that was caused moving forward. And we want to lend our legal assistance in that very complicated issue moving forward. And finally, I will say that at least for our office in New Mexico, it was very necessary to apply some legal oversight to ensure that accurate information is flowing down to stakeholders and that there's an appropriate claims process moving forward. We will be monitoring how the federal government provides funds all the way down to impacted areas, and we thought that that would be a healthy dialogue with our attorneys general, ensuring that adequate federal dollars are truly flowing down to the appropriate affected parties. I'll give you a good example. There are agricultural Native American farmers who are already worried about the cost of not only alternative water sources, but how they're going to feed their livestock. And the complexity of filing claims only adds to the fear that they are already enduring moving forward. So we are here to lend our assistance. And we're also here to establish a much stronger line of communication. I understand that one of the complaints in New Mexico was that EPA has regions broken up into 3 areas, which tends to lead to confusion among how we're united in terms of responding to this emergency. And that's something that we're hoping to work out directly with the EPA so that the response time to some of these issues improves and that we don't have the confusion or the delay of notification that we've experienced in the past. So with that, I'll stand for questions for me and my colleagues. Thank you.
If we could do maybe 10 minutes of questions that can relate to all 3, and then if you have individual AGs you want to talk to, we'll then separate, okay?
Yeah, could you, it's Peter Marcus with the Durango Herald. Could you guys each individually address the potential for a lawsuit on behalf of your individual states against the EPA, or the possibility of a collective lawsuit together as 3 states?
Start.
I will be prudent in my comments because I really do believe it is too early for us to know if litigation is necessary or appropriate. As I mentioned earlier, I have some reassurance by the fact that EPA has acknowledged responsibility and has said that they are going to make people whole. They're going to respond to claims. I think that the federal government deserves an opportunity to do that, just as anyone else who is in the position of having caused a man-made environmental catastrophe deserves the opportunity to do that. We know that sometimes as time goes on and claims come in later, that the pressure of litigation and the interest of attorneys and attorneys general can sometimes help move things along. And so I don't count out the possibility that I, as Colorado Attorney General, or preferably we as Western States Attorneys General who are impacted, might in fact be looking at a claim against EPA and the federal government. But as I say, it's too soon to know that. And I think we all have to be cautious and circumspect in the language that we use and give our federal partners an opportunity to do the right thing.
I fully concur with General Kaufman that it's premature to say with any certainty what kinds of claims we may bring. Certainly our job is to make sure that the agency is accountable for its actions, and it was promising to hear the administrators say that they will hold themselves fully accountable in a very transparent way. What that actually means going forward, I think, remains to be seen, and we're hopeful, and it doesn't need to be an antagonistic process, but we are evaluating a number of different potential claims under state or federal law, administratively or otherwise, and I think we are looking at them both individually as states and possibly collectively as sister states. So all of those things I think are on the table, but again, any good lawyer will tell you before you even start to talk about what kind of a claim you may have, you need to understand what the damage is, and right now we are all waiting to assess that and understand the scope of that, and then once we do get that data, I think we can make more informed decisions. Thank you.
I also concur with the information. The only thing I would add that we're also considering in this type of legal oversight that's important, and I was pleased to hear some of the elements that I'm considering is that there absolutely needs to be full transparency of information by the federal government. And we will continue to monitor that as we request not only results, but also what caused the initial tragedy. We will be monitoring how they produce those reports. We're also very pleased that they are willing to seek out an independent assessment of liability, an independent assessment of what caused the tragedy. We will review those reports closely. And then I'll also weigh, working closely with our federal delegation and the governor of New Mexico and our own respective environment department in weighing whether litigation is necessary at some point. But information, we still don't have adequate information in our fact finding. We'll be encouraging the EPA to be as timely and as forthcoming in order to keep those channels open. And then also we will need those reports to fully assess the longer-term financial consequences.
Next question.
How do you all feel about the EPA's response to its own accident? A lot of people have said, Governor Hickenlooper said yesterday that Governor of New Mexico has complained about this. If they didn't sound the alarm fast enough, they didn't warn people fast enough, they've been slow to come forward with information. So I'd like to hear from all of you a little bit about your thoughts on that.
Switch up the order just a little bit. I think I can speak for all of us and individually that for our state we were a bit frustrated about the timing of the information and the notice. I believe the administrator today in her press conference acknowledged that the process wasn't as efficient as it could be or should be, and that they were taking measures nationwide to assure that in any other situation that information would flow more quickly. So I think they've acknowledged that, and certainly I can say we would have appreciated having much more information more quickly.
I do think in trying to understand the tragedy that just occurred, I would encourage, and I'm going to work with my federal delegation, for EPA to seek out as much independent oversight as to their fact-finding in terms of where their failures were, because they are not only directly responsible for causing this catastrophe, but now they're charged with full remediation. And so the more independent oversight the federal government can have, I believe the more successful EPA will be in restoring trust and also being transparent with the full extent of their liabilities and remedies.
Obviously in Colorado, we knew first because we saw the yellow-orange water in the Animas River. And so folks had a very tangible and stark visual impression of what was happening. My understanding from talking to folks locally is that there is still anger and frustration with the EPA, not only over the time it took to actually respond and talk about what had happened, but in releasing test results about the water and the toxicity levels. And I think as someone who's been in government for about 2 decades, I have learned that when you withhold information that people know that you have, it raises their level of suspicion and it creates an impression that something is wrong. I don't know that that is true, but I would encourage the EPA and all of the entities involved going forward to communicate with the citizens through their local media, on social media, to release test results as soon as possible, to talk about what is happening, and to reassure people in the community that their health and their safety are protected. I think that is what we owe as elected officials and public officials to the people that we represent, and we should never forget that responsibility.
You all are ready to talk to the individual attorney generals. We're ready to do that as well. We'll try to stay out of everybody's way so you're able to get a good shot. Please let us know what you need.